Hey everyone, welcome back to our next tutorial, and today is the 934 backpack by Stitches by Christy. This is an amazing small to medium sized backpack with a lot of different inclusions. We have our main focal piece here, which is the front flap, and that hides a slip pocket and hidden zipper pocket inside as well. Great for secure storage. The sides have these awesome zippered pockets, which are actually part of the gusset. How clever is that? And on the inside, both the front and back panel feature a big slip pocket. Lots of storage. You can see just how wide that backpack is. Fantastic for a day out, for work. You'll fit everything that you need, and it's a great way to show off that feature fabric. That front flap would be perfect for a feature panel. So I love it. I know that you will too. So make sure you go to the description, grab a copy of the pattern. I'll link it up there. Get it printed. Get your fabric and stabilizer ready to go, and then let's get sewing. Back to our latest tutorial, and today it is the backpack 934 by Stitches by Christy. Now this pattern has really become one of my favorite backpack patterns. It's a small to medium sized backpack with a heap of storage, some really fun features, and the perfect way to show up some special fabric. Now for today, this make, I've got this gorgeous inspired print waterproof canvas. It's a polyester base, nice and hard wearing, durable, perfect for the outside of a backpack. For a highlight, I have this diamond weave synthetic leather or vinyl from Sophisticated in Singapore. Again, waterproof, beautiful color, and nice texture to go with that print. And for my interior, I have some vibrant view canvas in a, let's call it a salmony peach kind of color. Again, this is from Sophisticated Craft in Singapore. Lightweight, durable, waterproof, and it doesn't require interfacing, which is very much a favorite feature of mine. Okay, now we've talked fabric, let's move on to hardware and stabilizers. For hardware and stabilizers, for such a beautiful looking bag, it really doesn't require much hardware at all. So we have some webbing, zipper tape, 2 1-inch ladder lock buckles, a magnetic snap, I'm using 18mm wide one, 4 or 5 zipper pulls. Now that variance in number will depend if you want 2 or 1 zipper pull on that top main closure. Also some rivets, and that's about it, to be honest. We really don't need much. Now, in terms of stabilizers, I'm using, I'd say, an eclectic mix today. So I'm using some smackdown or stick-on foam for my main panels, for my straps, some sew-in foam. This is the 4mm Premium from Sophisticated. It's nice and thick, and it bounces back. And for the base, I'm going to be using some sew-in stabilizer. I would be joining these two pieces, but otherwise, that's about it. It's really friendly for hardware. All right, now that we've explained our materials and hardware, let's get sewing. So we're going to start off with our interior panels. First up are our interior slip pockets. So both the back and front of your interior bag will be the same. So we're going to repeat the process twice for each. Now we have our interior pocket backing and our front. So I've tried to go a little bit special for this one. Now obviously the back is a lot taller than the front, but there is good reason for that. Let's pop them right sides together, lining up that top shorter edge. Once you've done that, so clip along the top. Now we're going to be doing the same thing twice. So clip along the top for that one too. Once you've done that, straight over to the sewing machine. Let's get sewing straight away. We are going to sew across the top of that with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Do the same for both, and then come back here. Okay, I've sewn this with my 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now, I'm just going to flip it over. We want to fold this up and open so our seam allowance goes up towards the back piece. I'm just going to press it with my hands for the moment. So our seam is facing up towards the back piece. Then we fold the seam, or fold the backing piece over the seam and try and keep that seam up. What this is going to do is create a little border with the backing. So just position it, and I'm just going to clip it then, just to hold it in place. All right, same with the other one. So same thing again, press it up so that seam allowance is up towards the larger backing portion. Fold it down. The bottom edges still will not meet, so don't worry about that. We just want that seam sort of being wrapped up in that backing piece. Then clip. So what we're going to go do now, press and baste. Once you have done that, if you'd like to, you can go ahead and top stitch the top. So 1/8 inch from the top there. Do the same for both. And then we'll tackle the bottom bit next. Alright, so we have top stitched along the top there, creating that cute little border, and basted down the sides of each. Now for this bottom portion, we're basically mirroring this border. So I'm going to just turn it around to make it easier for myself. We're going to fold that open bottom portion there, just so it meets the raw bottom of your front pocket. So fold it, and then fold it again, so it encloses those raw edges. I'm just going to pop a couple of pins in. So again, you're basically double folding just to enclose the raw edges of both your rear, the backing, and the front. All right, same thing all the way across. So once it's secure, so you can either clip or pin, repeat the process with your other pocket piece, and then we're going to look to attach it to the rest of our lining. So we're going to need the middle sections, the interior middle sections, and your side panels. So go ahead and grab those lining pieces and then come back. All right, time to attach our slip pocket to our middle section. So we have our interior middle panel, and we also have our side sections. So 2 side sections per lining. We are going to grab our interior slip pocket that we just finished. Now I've made a mark 3 inches from the bottom. So if you're using directional fabric, just make note from the bottom. Lining up the bottom of our slip pocket with the base here. Now I'm just going to pin across because I can. I'm using canvas, so there is no issue with pinning. If you're using something different though that can't be pinned, you can either clip or double-sided tape, whatever you prefer there. So clip across, keeping along that 3-inch mark. Same there. Beautiful. And then the sides. Now we have already basted them, but we're going to clip them to the sides here. Now the process is going to be the same for both sides, so repeat the process. We're going to top stitch along the bottom here with that 1/8 inch seam allowance, pretty much to mirror that top, and then baste the sides. So go ahead and do that for both of your slip pockets and interior middle pieces, and when we get back we'll talk about the side sections. All right, looking good. So there is our interior slip pocket attached. Open at the top, attached at the bottom, and baste at the sides. Now we're going to get our side sections. Just place them as you want them, and then turn and clip along the edges, matching up these long straight edges. There we go, and the other side. Perfect. All right, once you have done that, we are going to take this back to our sewing machines. And same with both of the sides. So with a 1/4 inch seam allowance down the sides. Once you've done that, open them up, and then we will top stitch through our side panels with a 1/8 inch seam allowance. So do the same for both of those. Once you've done that, come back and we'll talk about how we are going to trim these down to match the overall shape. And there we have it. There is our interior lining panels. Now, all I've done is use my paper pattern piece to trim this down. So I just centered it, drew a line, and then just cut it out accordingly. And then we have our two matching pieces, all top stitched beautifully, and our slip pocket ready to go. All right, next up, we're going to be working on our flap. So we're going to need the exterior and lining of our flap, our stabilizer, and our magnetic snap. Time to move on to forming our flap. So we need our stabilizer, our exterior, our lining, our male portion of our magnetic snap, a little bit of Decaville just to make sure that it doesn't wear through, and some duct tape. So grabbing your lining. Now on the paper pattern piece, it does have marking for your magnetic snap. So make sure you've transferred that. And if you haven't, now's the perfect time to do so. So I have a dot there to represent the center of my magnetic snap. Use the washer to mark the placement for your prongs. Bend it in half, grab some nice sharp scissors and just create a small slit. Doesn't need to be a big one, we don't want it being too big. So that was the wrong side of my fabric. On the right side, I will desperately try and find where I just cut through. There we go. Okay, so I probably made it, oh no, didn't make it too small. Now if your fabric frays, please feel free to use some fabric glue or fray stop on this one. I have my scrap bit of Decaville. Just going to pop it on there. It doesn't have to be Decaville, but just some sort of substantial stabilizer. Washer on, and then I bend my prongs outwards to reduce bulk. Bit of duct tape over the top, and there we go. Perfect. Nicely done. Okay, grab your exterior. Let's pop those right sides together. Line them up, make sure they fit nicely. They should be the exact same size. If there is a slight disparity though, do not worry. You have your 1/4 inch seam allowance to take up any discrepancy, and we are not machines. So unless you've used a cutting machine to cut all this, then it's fine to have little bits of errors here and there. All right, so clip all the way around. Once you've done that, back to the machine, and we're going to sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around, leaving the top portion open. Make your stitch length a little bit smaller for those corners, just so we can make it nice and smooth. Now you may want to attach your stabilizer before we do this, so if you're using a fusible one, by all means attach it now. Because I'm using a sew-in one, so a bit of foam, I will insert this afterwards. So go ahead and do that, and when we come back we'll talk about how we're going to finish it off. I've sewn around my flap with that 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now we're just going to reduce down some of the bulk. So using some pinking shears or scissors and cutting notches, we clip into those corners. I'll go across the bottom as well. There we go. Oh, my pinking shears are so blunt. Oh my goodness. I think I've said that many times now. Maybe for Christmas I'll ask Santa for some new ones. We'll see. Okay, now we're going to turn it right sides out. Now be careful. You can use a bit of force, but we also don't want to rip any of our stitches now, do we? Looks like I've coordinated my dressing gown with my fabric very nicely. Pushing it out. Take your time, use your fingers. There we go. Nice round corners. Now if you can press this, by all means do so. Try and roll the seam so we can't see any of the lining poking through from the underside. I'm going to insert my stabilizer after I've pressed it, and then we're going to take it back to the machine and we're going to top stitch now. 1/8 inch seam allowance around the sides and then baste across the top. So go ahead and do that, and then we'll move on to our next step. There's my flap, all top stitched, all finished. I do love that 1.5mm foam stabilizer from Sophisticated. It just gives it that body without too much bulk or stiffness. Okay, let's pop this aside just for the moment, and we're going to work on our front pocket. Now, there's a few moving parts to this one, but we're just going to take it step by step. Let's start off with some quick preparation. We need our 9 3/4 inch zipper, which I love the fact it's 9 3/4 inches. So go ahead and grab that, pop your zipper pull on. Our front pocket piece is a large piece. There is a mark. We need to cut 2 inches off the top, but do not get rid of that 2-inch strip. Hold on to it, keep it tight. There we go. All right, and our other preparation, the top portion of our panel, so I've gone in the vinyl. Again, on the pattern piece, it has markings to cut that in half. I'm always hesitant to cut anything in half until I'm right up to the step, because this especially is the absolute last of the vinyl. So I want to make sure that I'm getting it right. All right, let's put all that aside. All right, first up, we're going to grab our zipper and our 4 zipper tabs. Let's get our zipper and get a zipper tab right sides together with it. I'm just going to clip, then flip it on over. Make sure it's nice and straight. Grab another zipper tab, and we're sandwiching in between. So right sides of zipper tab are facing the zipper. Same on the other end. Up and over. All right, once you have done that, take this over to your machine. Sew each end with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. After you've done that, fold the zipper tabs both out and top stitch along the short sides, and you can baste around the other 3 sides if you wish to. Okay, we have our zipper. Now we need to make some center marks on this one. So mark your center of your zipper, then your front pocket piece. We've taken that 2-inch strip off the top. Mark the center of that also. And then your front pocket lining. Do the same thing. Find the center. That way it's all done and it's all ready to go. Let's start to put this all together. So get your front pocket piece, the bigger portion. I'd grab some double-sided tape. Let's find the end of it. Lay a strip over the top on the right side of this. And if you're like me, you just probably bunch it up together. That's okay. We'll just cut it. Perfect. Okay, take the backing off. Then we're going to get our zipper. Oh, easier said than done. Get your zipper, pull closing to the left, right sides together. So right side of zipper down. And then just evenly distribute that along. So you should find your zipper tabs finish very much in line with the edges. So Christy has certainly measured this out to perfection, I'd say. Beautiful. Now, next bit, our zipper pocket lining. Right sides down to wrong side of zipper. So sandwiching the right sides together and then clip across the top. So do not be intimidated by this front pocket. There seems to be a lot of pieces. Once you do it though, it really isn't that hard. So I'll try and talk you through it the best that I can. All right, so make sure it's clipped along. Make sure it's nice and center as well. Once you have done that, we are going to take it back to our machine, 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way across. So all the way across from edge to edge, and then come back here. We've sewn across the top with our 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm just going to trim those edges to reduce bulk. Same on that one. Okay, now we're going to flip both pieces away from that zipper. So flip them down, give them a little pull. If you can press this, I really would recommend it. We'd want a nice straight finish on there. And then once you've done that, we're going to top stitch through this seam here with a 1/8 inch seam allowance. So go ahead and do that, and when we come back, we'll keep moving on. Now that's top stitched, let's finish off this pocket. So flip it on over, grab your pocket lining and bring it up to the top of the zipper. Center it, line it up, and clip along the top. Alright, same with the other side, nice and straight. Now once you've done that, let's go back to our machine and just baste along the top there. Nice long stitch length. On your way back, locate that 2-inch strip that we cut off the bottom because we're going to be attaching that next. I've basted across the top there. Now we're going to grab that 2-inch piece that we cut off earlier. Just get the right side. So we're going to imagine it's directional fabric. So you want it facing right side up, then flip it so it's facing right sides together. Clip along, just lining up the top there. There we go. Okay, once you've done that, we're going to take this back to our machine again. Sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Just make sure it's nice and straight again. Take your time with that one. Once you've done that, you can flip that on up and then top stitch through that top strip there. There we go, looking really good now. We need to close up the zipper pocket. So the way I do it, I lift up this front pocket part, get my clips, clip the sides of the zip pocket together. And this zipper pocket is so handy. It is perfect for hiding those valuables. So it'd be great for passports, keys, wallet, whatever you want to use it for. All right, but first we need to close it up. So go ahead and sew each side with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Make sure you back stitch and get as close as you can up to this top seam, but do not sew over that mark. So as close as you can. All right, go and do that. And when we get back, we're going to need some of our top panel there. We're making great progress. So now we need one of our front top pieces. We cut this in half earlier. We're going to get this right sides together with the part we just finished. Clip it along the top there. All right, once you're happy with the alignment, take it back to your machine and we are going to sew across the top with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Just back stitch both sides, and then when we come back, we're going to discuss how we're going to top stitch that one. Sewn across the top there. Now I'm just going to clip those corners because we are using, well, I'm using vinyl, so I just want to reduce the bulk where I can. All right, we're going to push this up now, and then we're going to take it back to our machine and we are going to top stitch through this top piece with a 1/8 inch seam allowance. So back stitch start and finish, top stitching through this section. Next, we're going to need our front bottom piece and our remaining magnetic snap. So make sure you grab that on your way back. And there's the top sewn on. Let's pop this aside just for a moment while we work on a magnetic snap for our front bottom, but we are going to come back to that straight away. Now you're going to need to make a mark from the bottom of your front bottom piece, 5.5 inches up and centered. Grab your washer, so just like we did previously, center it over that mark. There we go. Bend it, and again, just a small snip, nothing major. I'll try and remember where I snipped into it. Why I don't do this from the front, I'm not sure. All right, Decaville again, just fitting over the top, then my washer, bend the prongs outwards. Yes, I always use scissors or something metal for this. I don't know why, it really hurts my hands when I do it, so we try and avoid that where we can. Okay, there it is, done. Now make note of your top and your bottom because we're going to grab this piece back. we want to attach the top of our front bottom piece to the bottom of this piece. So I'm going to flip it on over, line up the bottom there. You can see I've probably cut my bottom piece slightly too wide. I am very much not concerned about that, don't you worry. Sometimes I'm just not great at cutting and measuring. That's the beauty of handmade, isn't it? All right, so, and again, just to reiterate, the top of your front bottom piece is being attached to this portion here. So go ahead, back to your machine, and sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance across the bottom there, and then come back and we'll discuss that next step. There, that's sewn with that 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now we're going to fold our front bottom away, but we want to keep our seam allowance pointing to the front bottom. So mine wants to naturally flip the other way, of course, but that's okay. I will be pressing us. So we want to top stitch through this section here, so through the front bottom and your seam allowance with a 1/8 inch seam allowance. So go ahead and do that and then come back. Okay, that's now top stitched. Now, before we go to the next step, I found it helpful to actually make a marking of 1 inch down into the front bottom piece. That's going to give me a nice line to make sure I'm folding it evenly. So we are going to now get this wrong sides together. Trust the process and fold it along that 1 inch line that we've drawn. So they're going to be wrong sides together, folding it along 1 inch line, because that 1 inch is going to be showing towards the back. Now, if you can press it, do so. That'd be great. Top stitch 1/8 of an inch along that fold line there. So go ahead and do that and then come back. Okay, the fold is now top stitched, and I know it looks a bit confusing at the moment, but don't worry. I'm just going to pop a couple of clips in it for now, just to hold it in place for this next step. Flip it back on over. Let's tackle this part here and our flap. So center marking, grab your flap. I like to make a center mark in this as well, just to really make sure that we got it all in line. Pop this right sides up. So you got the wrong side of your flap or the lining side down. Clip along the top there. Easy. Once you've done that, just go ahead and baste along the top there, just to hold it in place. Okay, there is our flap basted on. Now we're going to get our other front top piece and pop that right sides together. So sandwiching that flap in between. Clip along the top. Perfect. All the way along. I hope you are going well with this. I know it's confusing, but we'll get there. Top stitch, well, stitch, sorry. 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then we top stitch. Then we're going to fold it up and top stitch 1/8 of an inch along this top front piece here. So go ahead and do that, and when we come back, I think we're very close to finishing this front panel off. Okay, that front top piece is now stitched on. It's sandwiching that zipper and holding it in place. Now, are you ready for that ta-da moment? Because it happens now. Grab that bottom fold, flip it up. So your bottom front is out here. Lift it up, move it up. So what we want is our snaps joining together. So just move it around until it snaps together. You'll hear that satisfying little snap. And there you go. I told you it was one of those trust the process kind of moments, isn't it? So now we are just going to base the sides, and then much like we did with our linings, we're going to grab the front main piece. So whether you use the fabric as from your back or whether you use a paper pattern piece, and then we'll trim this down to suit. So we'll shape it in that shape. So 2 steps, go ahead and baste, then grab one of the main pieces, trace it out, make sure it's nice and center, trim it down, and then we are going to move on. All right, we are back. So last night I finished off this front panel. I trimmed it according to the pattern piece and just rebasted it to hold it in place. And I also popped on one of these handmade tags. For placement, I just measured 1/4 inch up and then centered it between that and the bottom of the flap. Let's pop this aside while we work on our backpack straps. Down one long edge, we need to make a mark 3/4 of an inch in. We need to fold this over by 1 centimeter, so that works out to be about that 3/4 inch mark. So go ahead and make your mark, then take it over to the iron if you can, press it over to that line, hold it with some double-sided tape, hemming tape, whatever you need to do. So just one long edge on each. Now, because this fabric can fray, I'm also going to just be pressing up the bottom of my fabric, just up by 1/4 inch, if not less. Just enough just to hold it in place, so when I fold it, I won't have the possibility of it fraying. So I'm going to go ahead and press those long edges over and those short edges over and then come back. All right, I have pressed those long edges in and my short edges in also. I've now drawn a line center of each piece. So it worked out to be about 2¼ inches in. We are now going to fold up the bottom corners to make a nice triangle. I actually really like this outcome. I think it's really neat, and it sort of gives a feature to the strap. So I'm just going to use some double-sided tape, and I'll show you in a sec why I've drawn that line. I just find it easier for lining up things. So we're going to do this in a few different steps, just like we did the front pocket. So double-sided tape on, we're going to fold up each bottom corner to meet that middle line and press. And again, the other side, and press again. And then you should have a nice neat triangle. So we'll do the same for the other one. Might just do one line. That would probably make more sense, wouldn't it? No one ever said I was that smart. All right, this side. So pretty much the same thing. It really doesn't matter which long edge that you fold it in. I'm just a bit anal retentive that I needed it to be symmetrical. All right, this side. Press it in and press it in. I can probably do that first one a bit better. Again, beauty of double-sided tape, we can reposition it. There we go. So go ahead and do that. If you can press it, great. But you want to get that sort of nice sharp corner because we will be seeing it. So make sure you do it right. All right, for our next step, we're going to finish off these straps. So we need 2 8-inch pieces of our webbing, our ladder lock buckles, and our strap foam. So go ahead and gather that, get those triangles done, and then we're going to move on to that next step. All right, moving on. So I have singed the edges of my webbing. I'm using a nylon webbing, so I can do that. We're going to get our ladder lock buckle. I've got it right sides facing up. You can tell generally because the wrong side will have a divot in it. Let's just loop this webbing through that top hole, just the top one only. Now you can baste this together. I'll do the same for the other one. I'm just going to use my double-sided tape. So I'll use the thinner stuff. I'm just going to apply a line of double-sided tape. This is just going to hold the pieces together. I do like the fact that the webbing is a reasonable length. It's going to give it a bit more durability. Sometimes if the webbing's too short, it can just fray and you really risk it ripping, and I don't think that would be a good thing. So you can use double-sided tape for this bit, or you can baste the top, whatever you prefer. I just find after having made one of these bags already that this was sufficient the first time around, so I'm putting my faith in the fact that it'll work again. All right. There we go. And now we're going to pop these down onto our straps. So my straps are right side facing down, so we want our ladder lock buckles being put right sides facing down as well. So I'll get some thicker double-sided tape now. How lucky am I to have the options, hey? I'm just going to put it in the center. Now you can pin this. What we want though is to make sure, that our webbing or our ladder lock buckles end up in the same position on each strap. So basically we want the same amount of webbing showing below. So just take one, so right side facing down. And you want probably minimum, absolute minimum, 1/4 inch of webbing from the point of your triangle down, because we need to be able to sew it. And I'm actually really, really happy with that amount there. I might, just to be extra cautious, pop a pin in that one. All right, let's see if I can repeat the process the same for the other one. I didn't last time. I got it so wrong, it was funny. What do you think? It's actually not too bad. Might just need to move up ever so slightly. So this is what I mean when I say that you want to be fairly particular in how you're finishing it off. Yep, happy with that. Okay, so I'll pop a pin in that one as well. And then we're going to move on with our foam. So on the wrong side, I'll just work with one for now. So we have our webbing attached. We're going to get our foam. Again, I'm just going to put a little bit of double-sided tape onto it. I'll just put little pieces either side. I just want to try and avoid putting too much of my double-sided tape in the center where we're going to be stitching over. Center your foam so it's starting above where your triangle begins. Try and make it reasonably center. Okay, next. Now, if you don't want to use double-sided tape for these steps, by all means, you don't have to. I'm just a fan of it, and I have some here, so might as well use it. We are going to next be folding over these long edges. So I'm applying double-sided tape to both sides. We're going to start off with our raw edge, so we keep the folded one to last. Take it, fold it over your foam, and it should go over halfway, as long as we measured it right and cut it correctly. All right. There's my clips, always out of reach. Clip it just to hold it in place. You might want to use some basting spray on your foam, it's up to you on that one. And then we'll get the other side. So our folded over edge, I'll start from the center, fold it over. So same thing, it's coming over that halfway point, which is exactly what we want. So keep folding it over, really try and wrap it reasonably tightly around that foam. You don't want any loose bits, you want it nice and sturdy, and it'll make a comfier strap as well. All right, good, happy with that. So I'll probably still pin it just because I can. All right, and there is your strap. So now, stitching guide. You can just do one center line of stitching if you want to, but what I did last time and what's recommended in the pattern, which I like, is 2 rows of stitching. So I'm going to mark the center line just to give me a stitching guide. And then I'll do a row of stitching, maybe 1/8 inch either side of the line. So 2 rows of stitching all the way to the point of the triangle and all the way back up. So repeat that same process with the foam and the folding with both straps. There's our straps sewn and they're looking fantastic. I really do love that method. It's new for me, but it works. It really just does work. Okay, we're going to hold these wrong sides together now. Line them up the top. And all we're going to do is just take a small diagonal cut out of them. It doesn't have to be a drastic diagonal cut, just a small one. Because when we attach these straps, we want them angled slightly outwards. So, that way. So you want to have that slight angle in the top of them just to really fix them in place properly. All right, so now that we've done the straps, we're going to continue working on our back panel. So we need to gather together our exterior back panel and our back top top anchor actually to begin with. So the anchor is a bit that's going to hold these straps in place. So go ahead and grab your back piece and your anchor piece and come back. So here we have our back panel and we have our anchor piece as well. So let's make a couple of markings. From the top of our back main piece, we need a line 2.5 inches down. And then on one long straight edge of our anchor, make a line 1/2 inch up all the way along. So let's start with our anchor. We have our 1/2 inch marking. I was going to say that tape is not going to be enough, is it? There was no way that was ever going to be enough, but luckily I have heaps more. All right, so just some double-sided tape. Now, if you can press this, then great, but I am using vinyl for this section, so I am unable to. All right, so peel the backing off the tape, fold that long edge down and adhere it to that line. I will put another bit of double-sided tape on here in a second for two purposes. One, to hold this fold in place, and secondly, when we come back to stitching this down, it'll just help hold it in place for me. So I'll just try and keep it mostly on the stitch line. All right, now the idea is that we're going to sew this underneath the line. So line it up underneath that 2.5 inch line. What I'm also going to do though is grab some more double-sided tape. I really do have a romance with this stuff, don't I? Alright, so peel it off. Line it up. So you'll notice that it is wider, and that is by design. We want it to be. So the idea is that we're going to sew along the top here with our 1/4 inch seam allowance. We will put our straps in soon, and then that gets folded up to enclose those straps and hold it in place nicely. So now that you have it fixed down, go ahead and sew that with a 1/4 inch seam allowance using your normal stitch length. My strap anchor is now stitched on. Now it's at the previous point, or now, that you can attach the stabilizer to the back. If you're using a sew-in one, the next few steps will secure it nicely, but otherwise you can wait too. I am using a smackdown, so an adhesive one, and I know from using it previously that if I add it now while I still have stitches, it will gum up my needle, so I'm going to add it at the end. But by all means, if you're using a sew-in one, feel free to add it now. Alright, so this is now sewn on. From the center point of our panel, make a mark 1 inch either way, so 2 inches apart. This is going to give us placement for our straps. I'm just going to get a bit of double-sided tape again, and just roughly the width of my strap. Doesn't have to be exact on this one. Either side. Okay, so this is when we need to lay out our straps, how we want them to sit. So we're going to have them angled out slightly. We don't want them sitting facing inwards. So angle them out, how they're going to go. And then once you've got them in the right spot, flip them on over. I've always found, for me, I need to physically do that. Otherwise, I will put them backwards. I'll put them the wrong way around and the angle will be all wrong. So I need to actually lay them out, and that way I know that they're right. Okay, so stick it down to that double-sided tape. I'm just going to, because I can pin them, pop a pin in each one just to secure it. There we go, and the other side. Okay, so once you're happy with the placement of them, I would strongly recommend baste them in place first. I certainly am. So I'll baste them, I'll go back and forth a couple of times to secure them, and then next we'll look at finishing off this strap anchor. And I have basted my straps in place now. I'll just take out those pins and let's finish up this strap anchor. So if you have popped double-sided tape on, now's the time. We're going to peel the backing off, pull it up and over those straps. So this is where you hope that your double-sided tape is doing its job, but I always like to just pop a clip either side where I can. Now I will, because I've gone a little bit over enthusiastic with my tape, I will just trim those quickly. Otherwise my tape is going to stick to my sewing machine. I'm not doing it exact, I'm just doing it rough at the moment. Okay, now back to the machine. We're going to do 2 rows of top stitching at the top and 2 rows down the bottom. So the first one, 1/8 of an inch, second one, 1/4 of an inch. So those are our seam allowances. Do the same for top and for bottom. And there we go. It is now sewn across with my 4 rows of top stitching. And next up we have to finish our back panel. We're going to need our bottom strap connectors and our 2 longer pieces of webbing. So go ahead and grab those, and when we come back we'll look at forming those up. Okay, I have my bottom strap connector, which was a singular piece, and we cut it on the diagonal to make 2 pieces. And we also have our 22-inch pieces of webbing. Now I'm going to quickly singe one side and then the other side. I like to, especially when I'm using nylon webbing, really seal it nicely, because I know I'm going to be stitching over one of these ends. So I like to really make sure that it is sealed. So hopefully, fingers crossed, that'll stop it from unraveling. In my head, that sounds like a good plan. Let's hope that that comes to fruition, hey. All right. So I just put something there just to remind myself. Okay, so we have a longer angle on the triangle. We fold that along there. I like to just pop a clip at the end to hold it together. We grab a piece of webbing. I'm going to get my more burnt end, put it up. I like to have about 1 centimetre overhanging, and just really push it into that fold as hard as you can so it's sitting nice and straight. There we go. Same with the other side. So longer angle, fold along there. Get your clip. Get your webbing. Put it up into there. Again, at least 1 centimetre. If you want more, by all means, just add it to how long you cut your webbing. All right, now over to the machine, and we're going to sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance across this top here only. So just across there. I like to backstitch a couple of times over my webbing. Do the same for both of those and then come back. There's my connectors sewn. I like to just cut the tiniest little angle off my vinyl in the corner there, just to reduce a bit of bulk, but not cutting through the stitches. Then we're going to turn it right sides out. If you find that it doesn't actually get the corner out, then just use something pokey to get it out. Do the same for the others. The other one. Push out that corner. Then just roll the seam out so it's sitting nicely. I like to clip across just to hold it in place. Same with that one. There we go. All right, sitting good. Back to the machine again. I'm going to, little trick that I do, I mirror image them. So that way I know my top stitch always comes out, my top thread comes out better than my bobbin thread. So I just make sure that I'll have a good side on both. We're going to do 2 rows of stitching. So just like we did with our anchor strap, 1/8 of an inch and then 1/4 of an inch. Along the long straight edge, you can just base stitch and go over that singular line of stitching. So do the same for both of those. There are my strap connectors sewn. Time to attach them to our back panel. Now there's no set marking or position where to put these. We really do want them out of the curve, so I've made marks 2 inches up from the bottom there. That's where the curve sort of finishes, and it'll give me a good point. Now, in terms of angles, we want this strap angling up on the diagonal. So I'm going to put that one there and just clip down. There we go. And the other side, so angling up. Okie dokie. All right, back to the machine. Baste those in place, and then next we'll connect them to our ladder locks. Okay, there we go. They're basted on. Now we're going to pull our straps, our lovely straps down. So mine's a little bit floppy, my back at the moment, because I still haven't put my stabilizer on, but I will do that next, don't you worry. Oh, wants to run away from me. Okay, so we have our ladder lock buckle. We're going to grab the webbing up through the center hole there. So from the back up, I'll pull it nice and tight, over through that bottom hole. So the idea is when you're wearing it, that if they're pulling on the strap, it's not going to loosen off. But of course, you can push this part to loosen it. And then with the bottom of it, I'm actually going to, is it triple fold? 1, 2, yeah, triple fold. I like to do that because I find these metal ladder lock buckles, the holes are quite big. And I've had it a couple of times where I've just done a double fold and it has slipped right through. So live and learn. All right, I'll do this one as well. Up through the middle there, over the bottom and through. There we go. 1, 2, 3. All right, so I'm going to take this back to my machine and I'm just going to stitch down each of those quite thoroughly, back stitching a few times. I will then attach my stabilizer. So on your way back, grab your front exterior, have your back exterior, and also grab your 2 lining panels because we're going to attach them all together. All right, it's getting exciting. We now have our completed exterior front and back panel and our lining. Now we need to put them all together. So first, I need to attach my stabilizer to the back of my front. So if you haven't done that already, now is the time. I'm going to peel off the backing and hopefully, perfect placement first time, eh? We can hope, hey? It was good that the pattern comes with the stabilizer pattern pieces as well. I do like that. Because sometimes, you know when you want to make a pattern multiple times and you cut out the pattern piece for the stabilizer size and then you've got to reprint. That can get a little bit frustrating for me, but that's okay. All right, so there we go. Stabilized, ready to go. So let's work with our front for now. So I have my exterior. I'm going to grab a lining. Now, if you have had one that you're really hoping to put with the front, well, now's your time. Lining up the centers. Really nothing too exciting with this step. We just need to, because this is a bound bag, connect it all together. So just go around, pinning, clipping. If there's a little discrepancy here or there, honestly, don't worry about it. The seam allowance does wonders for taking up discrepancies. Okay, so clip all the way around. Just make sure you're happy with it. So you can, obviously, nothing's set in stone at the moment. So take it apart, realign, reclip. Because once this is together, to get it undone, you have to unpick things. And we all know that unpicking isn't the most fun job. All right, once you've done that, take it back to your machine and baste all the way around. So connecting the exterior and the lining. And then repeat the process with your back and the lining as well. Just be wary of your straps and the webbing. You can tie them together. You can even clip them together. As long as they don't get in the way of your stitches, we're all good. And there we are. Both pieces are now basted, all joined together and looking really, really good. This is exactly how I was envisioning it, so I'm really happy. Okay, we're going to pop these aside while we work on our main zipper closure. So go ahead and grab your gusset pieces, your zipper, your stabilizers, everything that goes along with making up that gusset. Okay, let's start off with our front zipper. So this is the narrow and singular piece of this. We have our zipper, we have our stabilizer. Now, I'm not going to attach my zipper pulls just yet. I will be doing that after. So if you want to go ahead and do those now, please go for it. Figure out which direction you want this pointing. I think because my front is going to be here, it feels a natural flow for the pattern to be the same way. So I'm going to put my zipper at the back over here. So I'm just getting some double-sided tape, popping it along the edge of this panel. Now, my clips that always seem to go far away. Zipper, face down. I've cut it a little bit longer than it needs to be. And just line it up along the edge there. Perfect. So right side's facing for this part. Then I'm going to grab, oh, my double-sided tape did not want to hold there. There we go. My lining, right side's down, so sandwiching the zipper. So the right side of our lining to the wrong side of our zipper. Clip it together. Now I will say, as long as I've cut it right, the first time I did this bag, the gusset fit beautifully. Like, it was one of those really happy moments where it wasn't, you know, half a centimetre too big or too small. It just fit nicely. All right, clip along. Once you're happy with it, once it's all lining up, take it back to your machine and sew along there with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I've sewn across the top with my 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now I'm going to pop my stabilizer in. You can do this at the start or after we turn and top stitch. I'm going to do it now because I know that it will fit nicely. Always a good feeling. Okay, just trying to center it there. I don't want to gum up my needle, so I don't want to get too close to the zipper. Okay, then let's flip this wrong sides together. Just pull on it a little bit just so it sits nicely. And just clip along, just even it out as you go, rolling that seam, pulling gently on the zipper, just so it makes sure that the seam is pulled out as well and hasn't rolled under. There we go, almost there. And the other end, roll. Perfect. Okay. Let's go back to our machine and we're going to top stitch with the 1/8 inch seam allowance on this edge closest to the zipper and then just baste the remaining 3 sides. Now once you've done that, on your way back, go ahead and grab your grab handle piece and the associated foam stabilizer. There's my front zipper gusset done. We're just going to pop that one aside while we move on with our grab handle. So we have our grab handle piece and our piece of foam. Draw a line 3/4 of an inch in. Grab some double-sided tape just within that line. So we're folding over the edge 1 centimetre. Oops. I need to learn how to make my double-sided tape stick, I've decided. Okay, that can be my New Year's resolution. Fold that down, press to adhere. I do like this method of the handle. I've done it a couple of times with other designers, I'll admit, but it always works, especially with the foam. It makes a nice squishy handle, but that's what you want. You want something comfortable to hold. So center it on the piece, so from there to there and sideways as well. Yes, you will have a gap. That is intended, so don't panic. Don't think that you've cut it too short, unless you really have. And some more double-sided tape because we can't get enough of that. All right, so much like we did with the straps, we're going to enclose the raw side first. So peel off the backing, fold that side over, press down to hold it in place. And then the other side, so then the side with the folded edge. I'm going to fold it over. It should go just over that halfway point. There we go. Perfect. Awesome. That's what we want. All right, back to the sewing machine. So mark a center point if you can. It should be about 1 inch wide, and do 2 rows of stitches, just like we did with the strap. So go down one side and then up the other side to finish it off. Okay, there is my grab handle done sewn with those 2 rows of stitches, and I've also made marks 1 inch in. I'll explain why in a second. We need our back zipper center panel. I'm going to find the center points of the center panel, just like I was grabbing the grab handle before. So fold it in half, make those marks, and then lay your handle on top, center it to these side markings, and make sure that that 1 inch marking is in line with the side of the center panel. So we want a 1 inch overhang. Make sure it's center just by looking at the other side. Perfect. Now you can baste it one at a time if you feel that your handle is quite thick. Mine will give over time as the waterproof canvas relaxes a little bit. Has a break. All right. Hold it in place. Back to the machine and baste both sides. Do it so nice and thoroughly, maximum 1/4 inch away, so aim for an 1/8 inch seam allowance. And on your way back from there, we're going to need our back side panels for that zipper gusset. That's basted in place, and now we have our side panels. So figure out which direction you want that fabric going. I wanted the direction going down. So lay it out as you want it to finish. Then fold it on over, line up those short sides, so keeping the overhang of the handle in mind, lining up the zipper side panels with the center panel, and clip across. So we're going to repeat the process for both, which is a 1/4 inch seam allowance across here. I'll backstitch a couple of times over this handle just to make sure it's really sticking there. So go ahead and do the same thing for both sides of this. The sides are now sewn on. I'm just going to trim that seam allowance at the corners to reduce bulk. And then once we've done that, we're going to open up these side panels, pushing them out, and also the seam allowances out as well. Go ahead and do 2 rows of top stitching through each side. So one at an 1/8 inch, one at a 1/4 inch through both. And then if you want to, you can add a rivet. I'm going to. I'll figure out where I'm going to put it and let you know in the next slide about the placement of that. But first, 2 rows of top stitching. And there we have it. So that back portion is all done. So let's orient it that way so I know what I'm looking at. All right, we need to connect these two. So to begin with though, I'm going to find the center point. I want to make sure that this is all lining up as nicely as possible. Not to say it will, but we'll try. Just get those portions there. All right, so more double-sided tape. We will also need the back gusset lining, so locate that in your travels. I'm sure you're probably far more organized than I am. I tend to sort of throw the pieces on the floor and hope for the best. If you have a system, please let me know. Okay, let's go right sides together. Oopsies. Try that again. Right sides together. Just adhere that double-sided tape as well as you can. And I will use clips as well Just because we have that handle, it's going to sort of want to fight against us a little bit in that respect. Now, if you have a discrepancy between the front and back gusset, again, don't worry. Do not worry. These things will all work out in the end, as long as it's not a massive discrepancy. If it's maybe a quarter of an inch, it really will come out in the wash. Okay. Once that's clipped, we're going to find our lining gusset, and just like we did for the front part of our zipper gusset. Right, so clip along, make sure you're happy with the placement of that. So for me, that didn't stick quite right, so I'm just going to move it. That's the beauty of double-sided tape. Okay. Sitting nicely, roll it on over, and the other way again. Grab your lining gusset, pop it right sides down and clip across. So same process that we did for that front part. Sandwiching the zipper in between, making sure it's all sitting nicely, clip along, and then sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Alright, there is that side sewn. I've already applied my stabilizer. We're going to get them wrong sides together, just like we did with the front part of it. Nothing really different here. So just roll those seams out. Try and make sure that that zipper is nice and straight. Clipping along. Beautiful. Okay. Back to the machine, top stitching with a 1/8 inch seam allowance, basting the other 3 sides, and then pop your zippers on. So do that now. Before we get any further, we want to make sure that those are attached. And then we're going to get onto the base gusset. So we have the exterior and lining pieces, and also our zipper tabs, our pocket pieces, and all the other associated bits. It'll pretty much be the last construction part of this before we put it all together. So if you have any remaining pieces lying around, grab them and we'll get sewing. And there is our completed top part of the gusset. So we're going to pop this aside, and then we're going to move on with our gusset pockets. Now this is a really interesting part of this. So we have our exterior bottom gusset, and on the pattern piece it has lines to cut 1.5 inches off. Now don't put this anywhere too far away because we will need these pieces, so cut them carefully. We need to use them. All right. Then next, let's tackle our zippers. So we have our 2 6.5 inch length of zippers. Now, see how you go with this one. I'm going to quickly open up the end. So I've attached my zipper pull, open up the end, bend it back, and I'm going to seal it and hold it open with my lighter. Now, see how you go in terms of length, because sometimes if it's too long, it can really pose an issue and you'll end up having to shorten it. So we want to just make sure it's right now. That way, it's a bit easier for us from the get-go. All right, so we're just really heating it. Now you can just hand baste it, machine baste a zipper. You don't have to use a lighter. That is up to you entirely. So we want, for me, about 1/2 inch from each end, because we want about we have our 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then we want to add our zipper tab onto the side as well. So I'm going to just cut off a little bit. As long as they're, for me, as long as they're the same, we're okay. It's not, the zipper pockets aren't huge. They're very functional, but they aren't huge. You're not going to fit drink bottles or anything else in there. So if I'm just cutting off a tiny bit of the zipper, I'm not so worried about that. All right, so we'll do the other one in the same manner. Open it out, repeat the process. I won't bore you too much. So repeat the process, check that you have about 1/2 inch either side of your zipper in comparison to the exterior gusset, and then come back here. We're going to need our zipper tab. Okay, there's our 2 zippers, they now match. We are going to get our zipper tab Pop it right sides down with the zipper, so short end of zipper tab. We'll do the same for the other one, right sides together. You're not going to see much of this zipper tab, so I'm not too concerned with the direction of my print. Back to the machine, sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Go ahead and do the same for both of those, and when we come back, I'll tell you how we're going to finish this one off. I've sewn across with that 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now, I'm going to lift up and away. I'll fold it over. Fold the bottom edge towards your zipper and then fold again. So this will mean that the end of our zipper is enclosed. So same thing, lift up. We don't want to add too much length to our zipper. We've measured it perfectly. So if you feel like you need to cut a little bit off, that's fine, but it is okay for it to overlap. It's almost preferable for it to be a bit longer on the back. That way we know next when we top stitch with our 1/8 inch seam allowance that we're going to catch the back. So go ahead and do the same for both of those, and on your way back we're going to need our gusset zipper pocket linings and our exterior gusset. All right, my zipper tabs are now sewn. Let's grab our exterior gusset. I'm just going to lay it like this. I might lay it like that actually. So I got right edges, so the right sides are facing up. I'll grab some double-sided tape. And what I'll do, I'll apply it, but not all the way across because I don't want to risk gumming up my needles. Now the key with this part is that we want the zippers closing in the same direction. So it really doesn't matter at the moment which way that is, but as long as they're going the same way. What I might do as well, just to be a bit anal retentive, is cut center markings. I can't talk and do stuff at the same time. Cut center markings in my zipper and gusset, just so I know that it's perfectly center. Why I didn't do this earlier, who knows? But here we are. So I'm thinking of it as I go. These pockets, I really, really love these pockets. I think it's a great feature, especially if you've got some cool zipper pulls. I managed to score these dragon ones that I think go really well with my print. And my next one, because yes, I already have a next one in mind. I'm just waiting on some supplies. Again, I found the perfect magnetic lock, zipper pulls. I found a lot of things I'm very excited for. Okay, we have our center markings. Peel off your backing. Lay it down, right side of zipper, down to right side of gusset. Now you can baste after we do this if you want to, up to you. I'm not too worried because I'll use my double-sided tape. I'll just make sure I put it on straight. And then I'll do some clips as well. There we go. And now the other side. Get the backing off. So again, closing the same way. Really take your time and triple check that one, because if it's closing opposite ways, it's not going to break the bag. It's just not going to look as nice. We want it all to be symmetrical to a point. Okay. Now, like I said, go ahead and baste that if you want to. Otherwise, we have our zipper pocket lining. 2 separate pieces. Pop one right sides together with our exterior, sandwiching that zipper in between. Clip and clip along. Again, making sure it's straight. More clips the better for this. There we go. Other side. Okay, once you have done that, we're going to take this back to our sewing machine now, and we're going to sew across each end with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Make sure you backstitch, make sure it's nice and neat. So use your zipper foot, each end with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Each side is sewn with that 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm just going to snip off the corners just to reduce bulk. Same on this end. Cool. take your lining up and over so it's wrong sides together. Roll the seam between your fingers, making sure it's nice and even and none of that lining is poking through from behind. And that way, I'm just going to squish it down. All right, same with the other end. Wrong sides together. Roll. Oops. Okay, once you're happy with that, take it back to your machine and on each end, let's top stitch 1/8 inch seam allowance from each end. So go ahead and do that and then we're one step closer to doing these gusset pockets. All right, I have top stitched along the top there. Now we get the other end of our lining and bring it up to meet the top of the zipper. So just center it along there, clip, clip along the top. Now at this point you can also go and give your pocket lining a press if you want to, and if you can, being careful if you're using vinyl for the exterior gusset. And if you want to, baste as well along the sides. So we'll go all the way around each side. So same thing on both sides. Baste the sides, baste along the top of the zipper to connect the lining as well, and then baste down the sides. Do the same for both of those, and on your way back, we're going to want to grab those little pieces that we cut off earlier. Okay, so that's all basted in place, and so are my lining pockets. So starting to take shape now. We're going to get our pieces that we cut off. Pop them right sides down along the top. And just clip along the top there. Nothing too hard about this step here. So just imagine that this is making up the bottom gusset. So irrelevant of the zipper pockets and everything else, it's just making up the bottom portion. Okay, sew along that edge with a 1/4 inch seam allowance and repeat for the other side. Now that strip is attached, I'm just going to again trim those top corners to reduce some bulk, especially because this is vinyl, so I'm trying to be conscious of that where I can. Next step, fold that up, including the seam allowance, folding it on up, and then just top stitch. That's all you need to do for the moment. So do the same for both of those pieces. Okay, that's all attached and basted in place. Now we come time to attaching our bottom gusset to our top gusset. If you want to, or if you need to, you can attach your stabilizer to the bottom gusset now. I'm using a sew-in one, so I'm going to do it in the next step. Now we need to make sure that our zippers are closing to the front of our bag. This smaller portion is the front, the handle sits at the back. So line up the two short ends with the zipper closing to the front of the bag. Clip along, and I'd really recommend that you go ahead and just baste both ends with a 1/8 inch seam allowance. That's now basted in place. I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to get my lining piece, pop it right sides down, and clip along the top there. So this is where that basting stitch just really helps. We don't have to worry about everything moving around. I'm going to clip both sides. Okay, there we go. Now we're going to sew across each end with that 1/4 inch seam allowance. Be sure to backstitch at each end, and I'm just going to do a couple of reinforcing stitches over my zipper. So go ahead and do that, both sides. Okay, there are my pieces sewn together. Let's just trim those corners just to reduce a bit of bulk. We don't want too much bulk in those corners, especially I'm using vinyl, so when I'm attaching it to my gusset, I want to make sure that I'm reducing that bulk as much as I can. Okay, let's turn it all the way out. Excuse the loud noises. Okay, so you're going to have one big loop of bag. Now, I'm going to do things a little bit differently. I'll show you the way I like to do it. You don't have to follow me. What needs to happen, irrelevant though, is that we need to top stitch through each side where we've just connected this little strip here with a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Do the same on both sides. And then I'm also going to baste one side shut. So the lining and exterior together. That way I'll be able to insert my sew-in stabilizer quite easily, and it'll give me a little pocket to insert it into. All right, so I've top stitched those edges and I've also basted one of the sides shut. So I can just simply, and hopefully it all fits. This would rely on the fact that I've cut it nicely. I did have to join it in the middle. Slot that in. So this is a sew-in firm stabilizer from Sophisticated. This is my choice for base stabilizers because it's firm but still pliable. It's flexible but it won't stretch. So there's a lot of benefits to it. I think I've massively overestimated how big I need to cut it though, which is fairly normal for me. I'm wondering if this fold mark here is significant for some reason. Do you find that you cut things out and then you just cannot remember why you've done things a certain way? I'm not sure. I think my memory went when I got pregnant maybe. Who knows? Alright, so I'm just going to pop it in. I'll go around, I'll fit it in. I'm not going to bore you with that one. I'll make it fit. Once it's in, I'll baste the other side shut. And then when we come back, I will discuss the binding options with you. I'm going to do things a little bit different, but I'll show you what I'm going to do. Okay, so I have basted both of the sides of my gusset. So now it is one connected loop with no openings. In regards to binding, now you can bind at the end. So once your main panels are attached, which is our next step. But I prefer to pre-bind. So I've got strips of fabric, same as my lining. I've cut strips, I think they're 1.5 inches wide. I'm going to join them enough to make one singular loop, and then I'm going to pre-attach my binding now before I add my main panels. So it'll be right-sided binding down to the lining, and then it's just a matter of attaching my panels and double folding afterwards. So up to you. If you want to follow this method, now's the time. Cut strips of binding long enough or join them if you need to. Make a loop, pre-attach just with a long basting stitch. Otherwise, we're going to move on to the next step, which is attaching our main panels. Okay, so we have our completed gusset and it is ready to go. So I have my binding attached now, and all that's left to do is complete it with our front and back panel. So we're going to start with the front. Obviously you can start with the back, but we want to make sure we're attaching our front panel to the front portion of our gusset. So this again is the smaller piece, the handle goes at the back. So I'll just open up my zip a little bit for now. Have you marked the center points of your gusset? So if you haven't, now is the time. Just do this by meeting the sides evenly and marking top and bottom. We're going to get our front panel, find the center point, meet it up to the center point of the top of the gusset. Now lots of clips and lots of strong clips for this one. So I start by matching the center points and just clipping a few clips here and there. Doesn't really matter too much at this stage. Then moving on to the bottom, find the bottom center of our gusset and our panel and clip again. Now what you can do, I didn't find the gusset to be too tight at all. However, it is good to snip a few small snips into where the corners are going, just to make sure it eases around. All my clips are connected together apparently. Okay, so sharp pair of scissors, particularly these bottom sharper corners. I'm just going to do some very small snips into my gusset, maybe 1/8 of an inch, if that. Not too big anyway, just enough. So when we go to get it around the corner, we can just open up those little snips and it'll just help to flex around that corner. So we're going to distribute this evenly all the way around. Take your time to clip it. Make sure your zipper is ending in the same position in comparison to the side of the main. Keep clipping around. If you need to, clip into the top part of the gusset on those top corners as well. I didn't find I needed to the first time, but look, each sew is different. Each seam allowance can be different, to be honest, and each type of fabric behaves differently. So if you're using, say, an all vinyl exterior, you might find that you need to do lots of snips just to get it to ease around. Waterproof canvas like I'm using isn't too bad in that respect. All right, go ahead, clip all the way around. I won't bore you too much with that one. Then I'm going to take it back to my machine and I'm going to do a basting stitch all the way around first. That is my first port of call. I want it to be sitting nicely. I don't want to be fighting against it. And then I'll do my proper stay stitch at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. From that point, I will come back and I'll show you how I'm going to complete it with my form of binding. Okay, I have done my basting stitch and my stay stitch from the inside. It is looking really, 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 really good. It's exciting. Okay, now, when it comes to binding, this is where I have, because I've pre-attached my binding, all I need to do is flip it on up, double fold it, and then just stitch it down. So this is why I prefer this method personally. I just find it easier, and I am quite lazy when it comes to binding. I know binding doesn't have to be perfect, but I've found the best results come with this method. So up to you how you do it. You can either just do your proper stay stitch and attach binding at this point, or if you're going to pre-attach it, fold it over, and then you're good to go. So I'm just going to keep folding it over. Then I'm going to go back to my machine and I'll edge stitch along the edge to attach it, and then we're going to flip it on over and we will be attaching our back in the same way. With this one though, just be careful that your straps don't get caught up in your stitches. Make sure they're well down and away from everything. So finish binding the front, baste, sew and bind the back, and then we are done. We are now sewn. We are ready to turn out. So almost last chance just to get rid of any loose threads. Obviously you can always turn it back inside out, but who wants to do that? So that's the binding all done. Really neat. Like I said, different methods, you choose what works for you. I just find that method works for me, and I'm not a very patient person, so I think that's the easiest way. So just take the time to appreciate your beautiful slip pockets. I do love that setup. And now let's turn it out. So luckily enough, we've got a nice big opening, so it shouldn't be too bad. So push, pull, do what you need to. Sorry if I'm going off screen. I always pull it closer to me. I think it's for leverage. I'm not sure. Now, don't worry if it gets a little bit crumbled. I would be surprised if it didn't. It is quite okay because once it is out the right way, we can stuff it. We can finish it off. I'm going to get rid of that loose thread before I get too far. All right, keep going. Think strong thoughts. All right, almost there. Let me just finish it off before I turn it over. Oh my gosh, this is awesome. I'm so happy. I was umming and ahhing about my choice of fabric, but I'm really, really happy with it. There we go. There is our amazing 934 backpack. I love it. I love it. I love it. Look at that. You've got your beautiful side pockets. You have that amazing front flap that is hiding your very clever slip and zipper pocket. Like, how secure is that? That is fantastic. And the back, so clever. Oh my goodness. It's just a blank canvas for you, isn't it? It really is. There are so many ways to personalize this bag. It is a fantastic pattern. I love it. It is fast becoming one of my most favorite backpack patterns. It's a beautiful, perfect small to medium size. It's great just for daily use when you don't need to carry huge amounts of stuff or changes of clothes upon changes of clothes. This is a perfect mum bag as well. That's going to carry everything I need for a day out with the kids. Fantastic. All right. Well, there we have it. That is our tutorial done. I hope that you have enjoyed it. I hope you're super proud of your 934 backpack. It is a fantastic pattern. Hats off to Christy from Stitches by Christy. That is really smart. Such a clever pattern. Makes a gorgeous looking backpack. I'm really happy with that. Okay, well, I hope that you've enjoyed this tutorial. Don't forget to like and subscribe. That way you'll be informed of my next tutorial coming up. I hope that you've enjoyed it, and I'd love to see what you make. All right, until next time, happy sewing.